Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Sammy Strings. I believe you have gained a lot from the last lesson where we talked about the anatomy of the guitar. So I talked about the parts of the guitar, the regions of the guitar that we have, which is the head, the neck, and the body. And I gave so many parts that we have based on this region. So today we're moving on with this very outline that we have here, which is the guitar string numbering. So now the guitar can be numbered from below. Can be numbered from below. So we can number our guitar from below, from here. We can number it from below. So we can start from this string downward. This is string 1. We have this as string 2, string 3, string 4, string 5, and string 6. So I would like to have a diagrammatic representation of this on the board so that we can have a clear understanding of what I'm talking about. Now here, this is my note. This is my note. And from here, this is where I might have my string being tied to the ferrule. And this is where I have my string tied. This is the knot. And from the knot, I have my string to be tied to the ferrule. This represents my strings on the guitar. Now, if I'm to explain this now, diagrammatically, what I explained just now, I'm going to have this as my string 1. I will have the next string to be my string 2. I will have the next one to be my string 3. I will have the next one to be my string 4. Then the next, my string 5. And I have the last to be my string 6. So now, from here, I'm being able to number my strings right from the first to the sixth. So if I have any issue with any of the strings that I have here, I can always say I want to start picking. Probably I have an issue with string 1. I can go with replacement of the first string. So whenever I want to get it, I just have to say I want to get string 1. Instead of saying I want to get a string that is tiny like this, that is down. So we just have to say I want to get string 1. If it is string 2 that you're having issue with, go for your string 2 and up to string 6. Just follow it up that way. So that talks about the strings. Okay. So now we now have the fret numbering. That talks about ways by which we can number our frets. How do we number our frets? So now on our fretboard, like I told you, I said it is being divided into segments by our fret wire. So the fret wire divides it into frets. Our fretboard is being divided into segments by the fret wire. Okay, so now when it is being divided by the fret wire, then we now have it to be divided into frets. So this talks about the first fret now being divided by the fret wire that is down, below the string we have up here. So if you want to give this a name, you have this part to be fret 1, then you have this part to be fret 2, you have this part to be fret 3, you have this to be fret 4, you have this to be fret 5, fret 6, and so on and so forth, depending on the number of sections that you have on the fret board. So if I am to represent what I explained just here on the board, then all I have to say is this part that I have represents my first fret, which is fret 1. This part, the whole of this part represents my second fret, which is fret 2. The whole of this part represented by third fret, which is fret 3. The whole of this part represented by fourth fret, which is fret 4. So this represents the fret wires on the fret board. So depending on the number of sections that I have, but this is the fact that I just made use of 4 sections here, so I have to just do the representation diagrammatically. So I actually talked about the fret numbering. Now, going to the guitar standard tuning now. The guitar standard tuning. There are 2 acronyms that have been developed for easy standard tuning on the guitar. So the standard tuning actually talks about the projection that each of these strings needs to give while it is at rest. The projection it has to give while it is at rest. For example, as I'm not playing this guitar this way now, as I'm not playing this guitar this way, there's something this sound has to give me. There's a projection this sound has to give me to be able to make use of the guitar. So that talks about the standard tuning. That's talking about when the guitar is not working while it is dormant. So there's a particular projection it has to give. So that talks about the standard tuning. So it can be tuned by making use of the tuning pegs, just like I explained to you during the first lesson. So we can tune it by making use of the tuning peg. So now there are 2 acronyms developed for easy standard tuning. Every adult dog grows, barks, eats. Every adult dog grows, barks, eats. Every adult dog grows, barks, eats. So for me to be able to identify my keys I have here, I need to pick every letter that starts each of the words that we have here. So we have E for every. So that means I have to pick the first letter E. Then I have to pick the first letter on the second word A. And I have to pick the first letter A, D. I have to pick the first letter A, G. I have to pick the first letter A, B. And I have to pick the first letter A, E. So from A, I can see that I'm having E, A, D, G, B, and E. E, A, D, G, B, and E. Then the second acronym now, like I explained, I have eat all day, go to bed early. Now, the first letter I have that starts my eat is E. A starts my all. D starts my day. G starts my go to. B starts my bed. Then E starts my early. So from A, you can see that I'm being able to bring out my E, A, D, G, B, E. And I'm also able to bring out my E, A, D, G, B, E, A. These are not just letters, they are keys, okay, on musical instruments. They're actually key that we have that is being represented on our instruments. So, but by the time we move on to the guitar chromatics, you'll be able to get better what I'm talking about, okay? So now let's move to the next topic, which is the guitar chromatics. So what do I mean by the word chromatics? Chromatics actually speaks about the number of keys we have present in an octave range instrument. Present in an octave range instrument. So on every octave range instrument, we have 12 keys. On all instruments, we have 12 keys on an octave of every instrument. So on an octave of any instrument, we have 12 keys. So these keys are present on instruments like guitar, like piano, saxophone, mention it. All instruments, you have 12 keys present on them. And what are these keys? We have what we call the C. We have the key of C sharp, or what we call the D flat. We have the key of D. We have the key of D sharp, or what we call the E flat. We have the E. We have F. We have F sharp, or what we call the G flat. We have G, we have G sharp, or what we call the A flat. We have A, we have A sharp, or what we call the B flat. We have B, and lastly we have the C that starts this same key that we started with. So now, but this is going to be on a higher octave, which forms another octave of its own. So now if you have to count all the keys now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So this very one starts the same key on a higher octave of the same note, which is C. Okay, let me now explain what I mean by the word sharp, like what we have on all these keys that we have here. Sharp actually literally represents what I call after, while flat represents what I call before. So like here now, immediately after my C, I have C sharp, which means that this has to be the next key after C. C sharp means that after C. And now you can see that I have a slash, which means it can also be called D flat. So this D flat, this flat is talking about the what you have before your next key that you have here, which is D. So D flat means the key you have before the next key. So which means that what you have here is after C or before D. So if I'm playing on C sharp, I can always tell my fellow colleague on the instrument that I'm playing on D flat. It means the same thing. And the same thing applies to this too. D sharp or E flat. Now musically, we don't have E sharp and we don't have F flat. Immediately after E, we have F. And the same thing applies to B now. Immediately after our B, we have C. There's nothing like B sharp and there's nothing like C flat in music. Now, let us move to ways by which major scale is being formed using chromatics. So that talks about major scale formation. So major scale formation talks about natural notes, like notes like what is commonly known as do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do in music and the like. So that actually talks about the major scale. Now, there are principles that guide this major scale formation. Now, the first principle is what is called the chromatics principle. So the second principle is the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone principle. So I'm going to explain this to us, making use of these two principles. Now, I want to give a scale formation on a key different from C. Now, let me make use of E. So let me make it E major scale formation. E major scale formation. Like I said, I have the first principle to be the chromatics principle. So making use of the chromatics principle, the first thing I have to do is I will ensure that E forms my root note and I'm going to end it as well on E. Just like I did on C here. I made my C my root note, which is my starting point, and I ended as well on C, but on a higher octave. So this makes it actually the chromatics of C. But this time around, the first thing I'm going to write is the chromatics of E. So that talks about the chromatics principle that I made mention of the other time. So I now have it to be E, so means I have to start from here, move it up, and stop on this as well, and move it down to this level and stop here. So now, if I want to start from E, then I have to make it this way. I have E, I have F, I have F sharp or G flat. I have G, I have G sharp or A flat. I have A, I have A sharp or B flat. I have B, I have C, I have C sharp or D flat. I have D, I have D sharp or E flat, then I have E. So from here, I'm able to bring out my chromatics of E. So I started from E and I ended on the same E, forming an octave. For clarity's sake, let me rewrite this down here so that we can be able to see it clearly. So the chromatics of E now will now be E, F, we have F sharp or G flat, we have G, we have G sharp or A flat, we have A, we have A sharp or B flat, we have B, we have C, we have C sharp or D flat, we have D, we have D sharp or E flat, and lastly we have the E that forms a higher octave. So this actually talks about the chromatics of E. So let's count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So this forms a higher octave of the same key that starts this. So now let's move on to the second principle that talks about the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone principle. So the tone rule says we should skip the next key, while the semitone says we should not skip. Do not skip. We should not skip. So applying this principle to these chromatics now, since we are starting from E, because we are bringing up our major scale formation on E, so definitely we need to start on the key of E. So this is going to be our first key we are going to pick. We now refer ourselves back to the principle of the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. The first rule says we should skip the next key. So because we have picked the first key we have here, we need to skip this next key that we have here because of the rule of the first tone that we have here. So after we skip this, then we move to the third key. This third key now becomes our second key if we are working on major scale. Okay, so now after this we have the next one to be the tone 2. So which means we also need to, after we, because this has been picked already, then we need to skip the next key after this has been picked. Then I have to pick this immediately after this has been skipped, just like the rule of my next tone. Then I now have the semitone to be the next one after my tone. Then semitone says I should not skip. I have to join the next key with the key that has been picked. So because of this very rule, I'm not going to skip the next key that I have in front of this. I have to add it up with what I have as my third note. So my A now becomes my fourth key. Okay, so I need to now move to the next one, which is tone. That says I should, whenever I have a tone, I should skip the next key or the next note, because we can refer to keys as notes and we can also refer to notes as keys when we are dealing with chromatics. All right, so I now have the next one to be the tone. So the tone, like I said, the rule says I should skip the next key when I have a tone. So immediately after this has been picked, I can always skip my next key here, then move to the next one I have immediately after this as my next key, which is the fifth key. Mind you, I am forming major scale. These are the major scales I'm bringing out from E now. But I started from the chromatics. Then I'm now trying to pick out the major scales on this key of E. Okay, so this will now be my fifth note. Then I need to move on. What do I have next? I have the tone. So like I said, the rule says I should skip the next key when I have a tone. Then immediately after this has been picked from here, I need to skip my next key, then move to the very note you have after that, or key you have after that. So which is C sharp or D flat. So this becomes my sixth key. Then I have another tone here that says I should skip the next note. So I have to skip the next note that I have here, then come here. So this D sharp or E flat becomes my seventh note. Then lastly, I have the semitone, which means I shouldn't skip. I just have to add up the next key with that. So this now forms my first note because this is the root as well. So this is going to be the first note on a higher octave. Are you getting me now? So from there, I can easily pick out the notes that was picked as my major scale out of these chromatics. So I now have my major keys on E after all this has been done to be E, F sharp or G flat, G sharp or A flat, A, then B, C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, then lastly I now have my E as the key forming another octave of the same key of E. All right. So if I'm to transcribe my major keys in form of scales now, I can have my E as my root note, which is my Do. Then this will be my Re. G sharp will be my Mi or A flat. This will be my Fa. This will be my So. This will be La. This will be my Ti. Then this now forms a Do on a higher octave of the same key that I started with, which is of E, which is my root note. Okay. So I believe you have gained a lot based on the lesson of today. So far we are able to treat guitar string numbering, guitar fret numbering, guitar standard tuning, and guitar chromatics. So under the chromatics, we are able to work on the scale formation, make use of the chromatics principle and the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone principle. So if you have any questions based on what you've been taught so far, kindly drop it in the comment section. So I would like to give you a simple work to do on the key of B, making use of the principles that I discussed about earlier. The first principle, like I said, the chromatics principle. Then the second principle, the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone principle. So let me just have a little glance based on it. The first thing we have to do is we are going to write the chromatics of B. So here we need to start from B, making B as the root note. Then we end it on B, on a higher octave. Similarly, when we are done with the chromatics, then we can now work on the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone principle. But please don't forget the rule, like I said. I said the tone says you should skip the next key after a key is being picked. While semitone says you shouldn't skip. You have to join the next key with the key you have before it. So that actually talks about the principle. So I've given a guide and I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to work out this following these guides that I've given to you. So I hope to see your answers in the comment section.